In the last day, I've been riding the bike just around the local sort of subdivision, not going anywhere, just to make sure everything was attached and no bolts had been left loose, make sure everything worked, and it's all seemed to be good. So today I'm taking it on a little bit of a longer run on the Expressway um, and see what it's like. Okay, so what have I noticed the last couple of days just riding it around the neighborhood? Well, obviously the seating position is very different to my normal bikes. What else is there? The uh, the engine sound is tremendous. It sounds amazing. Um, it's the first bike that I've had since 1976, where I can put both feet flat on the floor. It's very weird. Seems very weird being able to put both feet flat on the floor. Uh, I think the leg position is a little more bent, although yeah, it is, but I don't really notice it. I don't feel that there's any more weight on my wrists than there is riding the ZZR or the 14. So I'm not really sure about the operating temperature. What is normal for this bike? On the coolant gauge, you have a segment, a large white segment, and then a long sweep before it gets hot. So obviously bikes tend to run a little warm here because of the ambient temperatures, but I don't know what should be the normal operating temperature. Um, Hopefully I'll find out that today. Oh, sounds gorgeous. So when I rode it first in my subdivision 2 days ago, the suspension was so hard that it was jarring. So obviously I've read online about how the suspension is overly hard, and with the standard shock and such, it's pretty impossible to soften it up much. But what I did was I gave it a go. So I put everything on the softest settings. Now, the suspension is still very hard, but it is better. It's definitely improvement. It's not quite so hard. So the back brake's still not working properly. I've got parts arriving. Now, I know a lot of riders these days never use the back brake, but I'm sort of old school, so I always tend to use the back brake for stability and such, and also, of course, slow speed maneuvering. But so it's not really effective at all at the moment. No, but that's no big deal. I'm just having to rely on the front brake, so we'll see. You see the temperature's rising now. And in the 2 days I've been riding it, I haven't been able to get out of third gear because it's just been around the local area, testing everything. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like when I open up a bit. It's always nervous when you Always nervous when you first ride a bike after it's been in pieces for so long. So is the bike finished? Well, no. All of the mechanics has been done. Uh, but now I had to get it ready to be registered, so it needed to be running and such. But there's all sorts of details, like I'm going to have the hugger hydro dipped. The rear mudguard is supposed to be black, but it's, like they go grey pretty much, light grey. I've tried several things on it which were supposed to make it black again, but nothing has worked. So that's a bit of a pain. Um, I need to do something with it to get it to either be black or hydro dip it. But okay, so I'm not going to go crazy, obviously, because this is a trial run. Temperature dropped immediately as soon as I started moving quickly, so that's good. The mirrors seem so close. And notice when I'm looking down at the headlights, they reflect back. Now I noticed that I've looked at a lot of pictures, and all the pictures I see, the headlights aren't flush with the outside. They are set back a bit. So I can only presume that's normal. Okay, temperature's gone right back down now. Okay, so it really seems to be affected by the wear lines in the road. Now that could well be down to the tyres. They're 5 years old and they're not ideal. So I will be getting new Contis on there. It does seem so small over what I'm used to. So the temperature gauge has gone down to that first line, the bar. So I take it that's sort of the normal operating position when when you're actually moving as opposed to stuck in traffic. Obviously nowhere near as much torque as I'm used to. So it's you've got to play around with the gear shift in between, which I love anyway. So I hope the microphone is picking up that gorgeous sound of the engine. You definitely get more of a sense of speed. Perhaps being lower to the ground, or the overall size maybe. The temptation is to really open it up, but This is a test run, Michael. Oh, yeah, it's bumpy, all right. Okay, so the Beast definitely lives in a higher rev range. There's not a lot happening in the lower range. It really is such a different driving experience, or riding experience, driving, for fuck's sake, Michael. Brakes are good, not hideously sharp, but very progressive, which is nice, you know, on ABS bikes. I like them to be progressive rather than, you know, on-off. You know, that's one of the problems with the 14R. The brakes are so goddamn powerful, but there's no ABS, so you've got to be very careful with it. On the 14R, you grab a handful of front brake, and you're going to look up your front wheel really quickly. Whereas with this one, like the brakes on 1100, you know, it's that progressive. You can still, I'm sure, lock the wheel, but you've got to apply quite a lot of force. In fact, a great deal of force for that to happen. I've said before that riding in traffic like this so requires so much concentration because when they're traveling at this slow speed, people don't tend to expect anyone to overtake because they're in traffic. So they swap lanes without any warning, you know, to gain that one car advantage. So the engine on this one, the H1, is basically a mildly tuned GPX 750. Now I had the GPX 750. I love that bike. It was very good. And I don't really notice. You know, it's a few years since I had the GPX, so it's difficult to remember. But obviously, with the exhaust system on this one and the raspiness, it doesn't really remind me of it that much. But then maybe my memory is fading. So this is supposed to be just over 100 horsepower. Good for about 150, give or take. There's the metal strip that I had the accident on, not the same one, but identical to that. You really do have to play footsie if you want real acceleration. So six grand is 6,000 RPM seems to be where the power comes in. Nothing coming out? No. Good. Always good to check. Ticks over lovely. Carbs are well balanced. Thanks to Mr. Mechanic, my genius with the carburetors. So finally, we had 8 carburetors, 2 banks of 4, but neither of them had all 4 that were good. So um, the chap who works on the bikes, Mr. Mechanic, what he did was he stripped all of them down into 8 units and then rebuilt them using the good carbs. And it certainly seems to have done the job. So the temperature is just creeping up a little bit, but nowhere near as quickly as it does on the ZXR11 or the 14. Oh, that sounds nice. Ooh. That because of the angle of the gear change lever and the foot peg, the relation between the two, the jump from first gear to second through neutral is quite a big one. I've missed it a couple of times now. And my ankle has to sort of pivot in a very different way than it does on the my 2 other bikes. So that's something I need to be aware of. Like all of the Kawasaki engines from this sort of period, it's remarkably smooth. It's raw because of the sound, the induction sound and the sound from the silencer. But it's really quite smooth. There's some vibration in the higher elements, but nothing. Is this diesel? Or water? Looks like water. And this thing isn't made for city riding, that's for